Whether you drive a car,
need a car,
or just occasionally bum a ride with friends,
you've come to the right place.
Join Jill and Tom as they break down everything that's going on in the auto world.
New car reviews,
Shopping tips,
driving green,
electric cars,
classic cars,
and plenty of great guests.
This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, this is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast. I am indeed Tom Appel. Thank you for joining us this week. When you get a chance, do me a favor, do me a solid. Check us out at consumerguide.com. That's consumerguide.com. All the reviews are right there. All sorts of fun stuff additionally. And you can listen to back episodes of the podcast right there on our homepage. Though I strongly suggest you just subscribe and then you get it right there on your phone every week right there. Easy peasy. All right. She's the Undersecretary for Agricultural Affairs at Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk. She's a North American Car of the Year juror, and she does freelance stuff. Hello, Jill Ciminillo.
Well, hello.
You are remote today. You claim to be getting sick. I don't see a doctor's note here, but...
I don't know. I'm blaming you. I think you were sick in studio last week, and you passed it to me.
Turns out I was sick. I had a terrible week. I've been feeling terrible.
Great.
Well, too late now. I mean, whatever you got, you got. It's not going to get a whole lot worse, right?
Well, fingers crossed.
I mean, yeah. You can blame me if you want. I tried to blame liquor, but that didn't go well.
No, it did not.
So you're here by Zoom. A little bit of a delay. We'll have to apologize for that in advance. Crazy week of news, and I think one of the biggest news stories is that the Corvette ZR1 has been more or less revealed. And this is a big deal. It's a big deal because this is the new top-line Corvette. We've seen ZR1s before, but the horsepower number is significant in that it is much larger than we've ever associated with a Corvette. Do you know that figure, Jill?
I do. It produces 1,064 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and 828 pound-feet of torque.
And it's like 800 pound-feet of torque for like the whole rev range. It's like there's torque all over the place. If people don't know what that means, it means that there's always power. No matter, you're at 2,000 RPM, you're at 7,000 RPM, you're still getting a whole bunch of torque, which makes drivability excellent. And if you were to take the car on a track, which no one will do, it would probably perform very well there. Yeah, but it's 1,064 horsepower. It's got that crazy flat plane crank that we see in the engine in the Z06. Technically, that's a difficult thing to explain the purpose of, but it makes for a really crazy, lumpy exhaust note that is really cool and worth hearing. But the question here is, Jill, I'm just going to throw this out to you, what you think this thing will cost. Now, the new E-Ray, which is the hybrid Vette, it's about $105,000 to start. The Z06, which is basically this car without the twin turbos, starts at about $110,000. What does a ZR1 with 1,000 horsepower cost?
I mean, my gut says it's going to be close to 150.
Yeah, I've heard 180 as an estimate, and that seems expensive. And they can get, I think, what they want to for this. And I think you're still, Corvette is still like the value play, right? It's all American, it's Chevy. Regular people can sort of afford them. Now, all that's out the window when we're talking about this 1,000 horsepower Corvette. But 150 is an interesting estimate. That's about $30,000 more, $40,000 more than the Z06. And there's going to be a special appearance package and track performance package that'll add to that too, but I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to go 169,995. All right, I'm writing these down.
I mean, I think it could add close to 200 with package options and things like that. But I don't know that it would be in Chevrolet's best interest to price it too high. But then again, they made a lot of questionable decisions lately, so I don't know.
Right, and at 1/3 the cost of some Ferraris, it seems whatever. It's going to be a heck of a deal anyway. All right, I got a good letter. Ready?
I'm ready.
Now, usually when I say I got a letter, it's bad news, but this one's not bad news.
Yay!
This is from listener Bridger. That's his name, Bridger, Bridger. Still not sure who subbed in for Tom this week. The voice was hardly recognizable. Question, was there a period of time when cars were better than others? Example being 90s cars being better than 80s cars. Or is it too much to compare due to recent advances in technology? Well, there's an interesting thing there. And I think that obviously, and Jill, you can step in and agree with me on this. The current crop of cars is probably the best cars that have ever been built in terms of reliability and just general comfort and I think just daily ease of use. However, I thought about this really hard. You want to hear what I thought?
What did you think?
Thanks for working with me on this.
Well, trying.
I think there was an interesting period of time in the late 60s and into the early mid 70s before emissions controls really took over and ruined everything, where reliability and daily drivability was pretty good. And in 1971, people aren't going to remember this, but in 1971, Chrysler took a technological leap and introduced electronic ignition. And this was better for everything. You got better spark plugs lasted longer, cold weather starting improved. Everything about these cars was better. And for a very short period of time, also that was super reliable. The electronic ignition at Chrysler's was very reliable. So between like 71 and 73, 74, before catalytic converters kicked in and started ruining stuff again, there was a little golden age there where some cars were working really well. So it was sort of like the latest technology before everything got really bad with emission controls. So Bridger, that's my answer. It might be a bad answer, and if anyone remembers that period better than I do, jump in and let us know.
This might actually be a really interesting question to pose to our guest in the second segment.
Yeah, I don't know. Don is younger than me by a fair shot, so I don't know how many of these vehicles he actually drove, so everything would be anecdotal for him. But yeah, he might have a handle on that. Good thing we will ask Don. And we didn't talk about that. Don Sikora, editor-in-chief of Collectible Automobile, joins us after the break. We haven't talked to the good folks at CA in a while. All right, you know what's all new for 2026, Jill?
What is all new for 2026?
I'm going to give you a clue. It's the best-selling thing that's not a pickup. Did we lose you, Jill? All right, I'm
definitely breaking up.
Oh. With your husband or on, like...
No. Keeping my husband.
Okay, you're keeping your husband as you're breaking up on this call. But new for 2026 is the RAV4. This is a big deal because it's the best-selling vehicle in the U.S. that isn't a pickup truck. Also, the number is astonishing. Sales are up this year. They sold almost 250,000 in the first half of the year, which is intense. So that vehicle is going to be all new. It's a big deal. We don't know much about it, but it's a little bit like a new Pope. So we're waiting to hear about that. By the way, the CR-V is selling really well this year, too, about 200,000 units already. Do you have a favorite, RAV4 or CR-V?
I really like how the CR-V drives, but I like the styling of the RAV4 better.
Yeah, my problem with the RAV4, and it's a Tom problem, is I don't fit in it that well. It's strangely not big and tall accommodating. Damon Bell, our tall one-time co-host, also complained about that in this vehicle. It wasn't very good to tall people either. But apparently Middle America loves it and people fit in it just fine. And I've driven it. It's a great vehicle. All right, so I have a thing I need to deal with here, Jill. The QX80, the Infiniti QX80, which I have called the worst vehicle in its class, is redesigned for 2025.
I would have agreed with you.
Well, see, you fought me on it, though. You fought me a little bit on it.
No, I didn't.
All right.
No, I did not. I kind of hate that vehicle.
Well,
I mean, to me, I hate that vehicle. We'll stop there.
It's expensive. It makes terrible use of space. It doesn't ride and handle especially well. And it uses an ancient V8 that's really, really thirsty. There's a lot there to dislike. Well, that's been completely redesigned for 2025. I don't know if that's new architecture or not. I poked around today, and Nissan's architecture naming system's a little confusing, but I think it's basically an all-new vehicle. But it is also, drumroll, a much better vehicle than it was before. Holy cow. Have you driven the new QX?
I have not. I've seen photos of it. It looks certainly nicer than the previous generation. And it looks like it has some cool technology items. I see that Klipsch Premium Audio, can never say that word, Klipsch, is in the vehicle, and which you should appreciate.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
But, I mean, it looks good, and I've heard good things about it, but I never was really too much of a fan of the QX80. Infiniti and I are not simpaticos, so I haven't loved anything that they've pushed out since the FX.
So here's the deal, right? This is their big SUV, and this competes more or less directly with the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer from Jeep, and the Yukon and the Yukon XL from GMC, and the Cadillac Escalade and the Chevy Blazer and Tahoe. That's basically where this vehicle plays, and it is now competitive in that segment, I think. I don't know that it's better than any of the others, but if you're cross-shopping, go ahead and drive all. You have to drive all of them because they're very different, and I think that the Navigator and Escalade are probably still top dog. But this is very good. The big news here, too, is that they went from their ancient and dated 5.6-liter V8, which wasn't very smooth, to a new turbocharged 3.5-liter 6. So this is very much the transition that Toyota did in its big trucks. Big V8 to midsize V6 with turbos. The fuel economy difference is extraordinary in our testing. Consumer Guide tested a I can't remember what year, and I didn't write it down, but an old version of the QX60 or QX80, we got 12.4 miles per gallon with the old V8. I got 18.3 miles per gallon over the weekend in the QX80, so that improvement is massive. Front seat room and comfort, much improved. The interior is very attractive, a little bit over the top, but I guess that's what you do in this segment. The audio system is excellent. Here's a weird thing. The front seats have some sort of speakers extending the headrests that are metal finished. They reflect in driving. I don't like them. I see them when I turn. It's a very strange thing. But I drove the top line autograph, and the word autograph is all over the outside of the car.
What was your favorite feature about it, and what was the thing that you liked the least about it?
I wish the drivetrain was a little bit smoother. It's good. It's very strong. You hit the gas, you get a lot of power, but it does a little business with itself, more shifting at low speed than you'd like. And that's a thing you don't find in the GM products. They just have a big V8 and a very nice 10-speed automatic, and that's a really great way to get power to the ground. So maybe that's my favorite flaw. Handling, my favorite flaw. Handling, not great. Ride quality is pretty good. The stereo system is absolutely outstanding. I guess my biggest, the thing I appreciate most is that the cabin now is just much airier and roomier. This is where this needed to be in this class. It was really mid-size on the inside before. A couple other things here. The digital interface is nice. They've gone with a very modern single contiguous screen, which is good. And I guess that's basically all my stuff in that car. I rather like it.
Okay, I will look forward to driving it then.
Now, I have a question for you. There's a very weird feature on the Volvo QX60, which you recently drove, and I know you drove it because your phone's still connected. But the Volvo QX60 Recharge, I think the trim level was Ultimate, and it was the Dark Edition, which is a thing that just affects exterior trim. But you drove that vehicle recently, right?
Yes.
What was one of the more interesting features about the interior?
It's a Volvo. I don't know. I really like the seat comfort, but that's probably not what you're going for.
It's not what I'm going for. The seats are very nice, but there's something about the seats that were pretty special, and I'm having a hard time tracking down exactly how you do this. But this top-line Volvo had wool seats.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is they went through the effort of making it wool, but it's not the vegan interior. You still have a leather-wrapped steering wheel. So I'm not exactly sure who that appeals to, but that leather or that wool looks really good. It looks like really high-end furniture. It's really taut and smooth and very finely, refined. I don't know what to call that. But the seat comfort is great. They look fantastic. It's just a nice look. Also, because it's wool and it's like this light gray, the interior is just a little bit brighter too, as opposed to it being leather. But I was impressed by it. Very comfortable, and they're still very supportive. So strange feature. I cannot find out how you do that. I think it's an either or, but I don't see it as an option. I kept building the car and I could never find it, but it is on the Monroney label as a standard feature. So I'm a little bit confused. I don't think it's extra cost.
Yeah, maybe it's a base feature. I know Land Rover did the Kvadrat seats, which were wool.
Say that word again and then maybe spell it, because I have no idea what you said.
Kvadrat?
Yeah.
I think that's how you pronounce it, and I have no idea how you spell it. It's something like Kvadrat or something like that.
Yeah, I had an uncle Kvadra.
Well, the big joke that I kept making is it made me think of Harry Potter and their killing curse. The Kvadra, or what? But at any rate, it was a weird name, but those were also wool and really well done.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to do, and it's funny to do it at the high end because usually it's semi-aniline leather or some upgrade of leather or Connolly leather. I don't think they still do Connolly, but that was some premium hide. And it's funny to see this. Almost feels like a regress to wool, but it's very high-quality wool, and it plays well. And I think Volvo customers are just a little bit weird enough that they would dig that.
Yeah.
Having owned a Volvo, I think I can say that with confidence. All right. What else you got going on?
Well, here's an interesting story that I wrote late last week that I think it is worth discussing. I don't think we discussed it last week on the show.
This can't be about CarPlay.
It is not about CarPlay.
Okay.
Well, it's peripherally about CarPlay, but not really.
Oh, no.
Acura ditched XM radio in their vehicles.
Weird.
Yes and no. So a lot of new vehicles these days, if you're not familiar, they have XM satellite radio, and it comes with a 3-month free trial.
Yes.
For you to test it out and get all the latest greatest stations. In car, you have I want to say 100 up to 125 stations available, but there are 415 total stations available if you go through the app on your phone. And if you do the in-car streaming service, and you would also have access to the app, it could cost about $30 a month. But if you just use the app and have access to all 415 of the stations, it's like $9.99 a month. And so Acura's thinking was that they would take it out of the in-car system. And if you really, really wanted XM radio, all you would have to do is download the app, subscribe via XM directly, and then when you plug your phone into, get this, Apple CarPlay, you could play it through the car. So that's all it has to do with Apple CarPlay. So
they're just not supporting it directly, and you can just bring it in through CarPlay, and you could probably bring it in through their native system too, I imagine. No, they've taken it out of the native system. Oh, really? Okay.
And that's kind of the big story. And so what I think is interesting is, I reached out to Acura about this because I didn't notice it when I drove the Acura MDX. Right now, it's they've taken it out of, I think, the Honda Accord, the Acura MDX. I don't remember seeing it in the TLX that I drove last week. So when I reached out to Acura, and I was like, so did you? Because I didn't realize they did. And somebody commented on my review, and they're like, why did Acura remove XM radio? And I was like, did they?
So I'm confused, Jill. So you can't use the XM app directly? You have to do it via CarPlay?
Via your phone.
Yeah, but if you're going via your phone, do you need CarPlay to use it? You could still just...
I mean, you could touch your phone and then play it through your app, like via Bluetooth. Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. So you can do that. So you don't necessarily need CarPlay.
Well, no, you don't need CarPlay, but Acura MDX does have CarPlay. But if you're going to play it through your phone, you're going to be touching your phone. So why wouldn't you use it through Apple CarPlay?
Because you don't use CarPlay, and then you become a scofflaw.
Yeah.
All right, I get it. But we're going to see that too. I mean, that's the solution for AM radio disappearing from cars too, is simply that almost every AM station that's worth its salt has an app. So, like, WGN Radio in Chicago, of course, has an app, and every AM station that I listen to in Chicago has an app. So even if you lose AM from your car, you can still listen via Bluetooth.
Yes.
And I'm a lawbreaker, so I'll have to touch my phone.
Yeah, tisk, tisk. Everybody pull over Tom Appel and give him a ticket. Make him use Apple CarPlay.
All right. So tell me again about this story. You just wrote about that.
Yeah, it's just Acura ditches XM radio. It's on pickuptrucktalk.com. I will send you a link for our show notes.
We don't talk about this enough, but that is basically how Tesla works. There's almost nothing that they support directly. You have to route stuff in via your phone. They don't have any radio at all, I believe.
That is interesting. And I mean, so here's the unfortunate thing. Tesla does not give out press cars. So
Right.
we never get to test this stuff unless we have a friend who owns one.
It's convenient.
Right.
But yeah, that is an issue, and that may change too. I think Tesla's in very interesting waters now where their sales are down yet again, their stock prices are down, and I think they have to start behaving more like a regular car company. So they will have to advertise, and they will have to start giving the press vehicles. And part of that stuff too, when we talk about Tesla, and there's 6 million people out there who own them, but they haven't changed their cars, so there's not a lot of incentive to buy new ones if you already own one. But the other thing too is when they're reaching out now to mainstream buyers who want things like, I don't know, a radio in their car, and they don't want their turn signal to be a switch on the steering wheel. There's a lot of weird stuff that Tesla's asking people to do. And a lot of that may have to change as they move forward if they want to engage a larger audience. Because as Sam Fiorani said, welcome to the auto business. The honeymoon is over for Tesla. Anyway, we should take a break. When we come back, we talk to Don Sikora, editor-in-chief of Collectible Automobile Magazine. Stick around.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
And we're back. This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast. I'm Tom. She's Jill. Jill, how's it going?
Hopefully much better this time around. I
think it is.
I logged back on. So apologies for the delays in the first segment. We've decided we're blaming my husband.
When you weren't listening during the delay, I said all sorts of funny stuff about you. So it was a good segment.
Awesome. So I'm going to have to go back and listen.
You have to listen. Yeah, I made fun of you a lot. Hey, Jill.
Yes.
Ask me a question. Any question except one I want.
Okay. Why is the sky blue?
No.
That's not the one you want?
No.
All right, fine. Hey, Tom, are you on X Twitter?
I am. Thanks for asking, Jill. I'm Car Guy Tom on Twitter. I got my Saturday collection of Car Spotter cars up on time this week. People want to check those out.
Okay.
So that's the deal. But I'm a lot of fun on Twitter. I'm just saying.
Well, okay.
I'm a lot of fun at parties, and I'm a lot of fun on Twitter.
A lot of fun on Twitter. I sent you a Car Spotter last week.
You did? What was that? Remind me.
It was a Scout.
That's right.
I was walking through my neighborhood and I saw a Scout SUV, and it had the snowplow on the front, and I'm like, well, it's a little bit off season, but it's
people
fine.
sometimes don't take those off. The funny thing about those, when I started working at a gas station back in 1982, I think it was, the owner had a Ford Bronco, an old school Ford Bronco, with a snowplow on the front, and had the snowplow kit, which means that it had heavy duty front springs. When you took the plow off of it, it was almost undrivable because the springs didn't. It was so heavy duty, the car just bounced all over the place. It was a funny thing. But yeah, snow plowing was very popular with stuff like that. Guess who we have on the phone, Joe?
I know who we have on the phone. We have Don on the phone.
Don Sikora of Collectible Automobile Magazine. We haven't talked to the CA guys in a long time since John Beal retired, like a year and a half ago. Don, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. Thanks for joining us. How has taking over Collectible Automobile been? You're like this guy in a celebrity position.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and the magazine still looks great. I actually had a conversation recently with
thank you.
Frank Pyler, the guy who was really the founder of the magazine. He's talking about how proud he is of the job you and Harry Capsalis, your art director, are doing. I'm looking at the issue here. The August issue is on newsstands right now?
Correct.
All right, tell us about the magazine for people who don't know.
It's in its 41st year now.
Wow.
It's like a kind of a historical journal about cars. Usually there's 4 feature articles that go in depth into one particular car, like generation, or another kind of story. Like this time we have the compact cars of 1954. Then we have our regular things like future collectibles, cheap wheels. We look at the model cars of what's in that issue. We look at the literature of what's in that issue.
And you guys get great authors to do this stuff.
Yes, we are very lucky.
One of them we should just point out is our regular and good friend Sam Fiorani is a regular contributor to Collectible Automobile.
Yes, he has a story in the October issue, which should be hitting newsstands in a few weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I just got my October issue. Just arrived by mail. So the mail ones come earlier, right?
Yeah, we just got ours. They were here this morning.
Excellent.
And then so subscribers should be getting it this week. And then it's about 2.5 or 3 weeks till it's on the newsstands.
And the good news, too, is this magazine, and it's a magazine that you can hold, is still available on newsstands.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about this August issue. Jill, you got some digital copies of this stuff. But tell us about what's on the cover and what's in this issue.
So on the cover, we have a 1954 Willys Aero Lark. That's one of the compact cars of 1954.
Oh, okay.
Which was kind of an interesting year where the first group of compacts was kind of the Rambler from American Motors had kind of taken the lead, and the other ones were falling by the wayside. Like the Henry J was in its last year, the Willys Aero. And the Hudson Jet was in its last year because Hudson would merge with Nash to become American Motors.
Okay. Now, speaking of these small cars, and you mentioned the Henry J. The Henry J was the vehicle that was repurposed, and I think people know this in cycles and then forget it, but the Henry J was repurposed as really just rebadged as a car sold by Sears as the Allstate.
Yes. For, I think, 2 years.
Oh, was that it? Just 2 years?
Yeah, just 2 years.
So how did that, I guess that didn't go that well for Sears.
No, it's pretty low volume, but my understanding is it was sold either through the catalog or through the stores, and it was basically just a Henry J with a different grill, but it had Allstate, which was Sears' brand for auto parts. Like it had Allstate tires and some other things like maybe fan belts, and but it was essentially identical to a Henry J.
And because Sears had service centers at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, they could kind of handle these vehicles in a sort of like dealership environment, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I would think so, but I honestly do not know that.
Yeah, that's interesting. One more question about the cars, the compact cars of 54. 54 was kind of early for compacts in that like the big three didn't really embrace them yet, correct?
Correct. The first ones from the big three are in 1960.
Yeah.
The Corvair, the Falcon, and the Valiant.
Yeah.
So in this time, it's more just the independents. It's, Nash, Hudson, Henry J., which was part of Kaiser, and the Willys Aero. And Willys was, of course, the maker of Jeep.
And what drove the independents to build smaller cars? Were they trying to compete on price, or were they just see that as a space where the big three weren't playing?
I think it was more a space where the big three weren't playing. It was Nash started it. George Romney and George Mason, he was the president of the company. Romney was his assistant. They saw it as a kind of an open area where they wouldn't have to compete directly with like Chevrolet and Ford.
Okay.
On price. They could come in with a different product and kind of open up their own market. And it worked. It ended up working pretty well for Nash. It took a while to get going, but by 1957, they decided to discontinue the full-size Nash and Hudson and went strictly with the Ramblers.
Interesting. And then as we know from a recent conversation we had on the podcast, Rambler became a very big brand for a while, right? Was it the number 4 selling brand for a little while in the U.S.?
Yeah, it was pretty big. I think it peaked in 1963. And then the market kind of changed underneath it, where the highest volume model Rambler had was the Classic, and all of a sudden it was competing against like the Ford Fairlane and the Chevrolet Chevelle, the kind of the first wave of the intermediates, and that really changed the market where they were competing, and that hurt them a lot as they went further into the 60s.
Now, I don't want to stick too long on one story, but you got two things here that I really want to talk about. And one is you guys covered the Javelin, and one of my favorite cars of recent history of the 90s, the Impala SS of 1994 to 1996, a car that kind of came out of nowhere and really caught people's attention. Tell us about that, and tell us about the story in CA.
Yes, yeah. Gary Witzenberg wrote the story on the Impala SS, and yeah, he did a great job. He was able to interview the designer, or one of the designers that was on the car. His name's Clay Dean, and he kind of tells the backstory about how it came to be. And then he also interviewed Ed Welburn, a retired vice president of GM Design, and he kind of gives the backstory on the Caprice and how the 1991 Caprice that the Impala was based on, how that car came to be. So it's a very interesting story. I'm kind of partial to those. I've owned a 96 Impala since the summer of 1998.
And you still own it?
I still own it.
Yeah.
And but there was a lot of stuff in here that Gary came up, that Gary wrote about that I had never heard before.
The Impala. Go ahead, Don.
So I'm just, if it's a car you're interested in, I think you'll love the story. And even if you're not particularly interested in it, it's just very good reading.
I'm interested in this car for a couple of reasons. One, because it's really cool. They stuff basically a detuned Corvette engine under the hood of a Caprice, so that's cool. Like right there, that's just cool. But the other cool part about it is that the Caprice, which launched, I think, for 91, did not receive the best reviews for styling. It looked a little bit big, a little bit bulbous, and maybe a little too rounded. And somehow the Impala SS fixes all those ills. I don't know how, and maybe you can just go over that real quickly, but it's just a meaner, leaner looking car. It fixed the Caprice. Yeah,
I think it's a very good looking car. The designer that Gary interviewed kind of describes it as in the Caprice, the what him and Ed Welburn think were one of the big problems with the Caprice was it had like skirted rear wheel wells.
Right.
And that was a thing that they say that Chuck Jordan, who was the vice president of GM design when that car came together, he liked that because it created a long, straight, unbroken line to the back of the car. But it didn't have removable fender skirts. So that meant you had to move the rear tires inward so that they could be removed.
Oh.
So it kind of throws off the proportions. So for the Impala, they based it on the 93 Caprice where the rear wheel wells were opened up, and they increased the rear track, and then they put on bigger wheels and tires, and they were able to lower the car a little bit, and it just changes it completely, the way it looks. And the designer says something to the effect that they were able to take what had been a negative with the Caprice, kind of the swoopy styling, and they turned that into a positive with the Impala. Yeah. So that was one of its strengths.
That's a pretty successful conversion there. And then correct me if I'm wrong, the Impala SS basically had what was the police package suspension from the base Caprice. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was at least related. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it's related to the 9C1 police package.
Yeah, so that makes it fun too. What else was different between the Caprice and the SS?
It has a different grille. It has a rear spoiler. The interior had bucket seats and a console. And then the early ones still had a column shifter, but the 96 received a floor shifter.
Oh, just 1 year only?
Yeah, just 1 year only.
Okay.
And the 96 has an analog gauge cluster where the 94 and 95 share the digital cluster with the Caprice.
So that's got to make the 96 much more collectible.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. There were a lot more 96s made. It was a long model year, and I think they made over 41,000 of the 96s. And I think of the 94s, it's something like 6,000. So I think they're all probably pretty collectible.
All right, we're running out of time here. I wanted to talk about the AMC Javelin a lot, but people want to read about that. I think it's the lost pony car, and it's worth knowing about. Don, tell us about photo features real quick, because I want to ask you a question.
Okay. So in each issue, there's usually 2 photo features of cars where we just have 4 pages of photos of a particular car, and then Jack Stewart writes a story that'll oftentimes include the backstory of the particular car in the photos.
Yeah, it's like a fun mini history that's super well illustrated. Okay, so Don, I have some unsolicited suggestions for you. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right, these are photo features that you could do. You won't insult me if you say not a good idea. Are you ready?
Okay.
96 Camry.
Probably not yet.
Okay, Daewoo Nubira wagon.
Probably not.
That is a joke only an auto writer would get, because no one remembers when Daewoo was in the U.S. But everyone remembers, are you ready, the 1993 Isuzu Stylus?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an interesting car. I don't know if that's photo feature. That might be cheap wheels if it hasn't been in the past.
I saw one a couple of years ago, and the weird thing about the Stylus is that it had a bolt upright C-pillar, and you can tell this vehicle from a mile away if you know what it is, but no one knows what it is. Then finally, Don, you have the 2007 Saturn Relay minivan.
Probably not yet on that one.
Yeah,
either.
You could say no.
Yeah.
Don, how Collectible Automobile Magazine, probably one of the finest old car magazines out there, probably the best. How can people get a hold of this? Obviously, they can go pick them up at the newsstand, but you get a better price by subscribing, right?
Yes, and you can subscribe at our website, collectibleautomobile.com. And there's also a function on the website where you can find newsstands in your area. I think it's just for the U.S. and Canada where you can pick it up in person.
And there's also a spot on your webpage for our interviews with the Car Stuff podcast. So we'll be adding this to that as well.
Yes, we will get this updated.
All right. So we just talked about, we're running out of time here, Don, but we just talked about the August issue. What's coming up in October?
In October, we have the Cars of 1966. We have a history of the 1971 to 73 Mercury Cougar, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The 1979 to 85 Oldsmobile Tornado.
Love.
And then a very interesting, complicated story of the lower line 1931 to 33 Chryslers.
Oh.
Where would be the 6-cylinder and 8-cylinder models positioned well below the Imperial.
Okay. That's good stuff. And that's on newsstands. What did you say? A couple of weeks?
In about two or 3 weeks.
Excellent. Don, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, well, thank you. That
was Don Sikora with Collectible Automobile Magazine. We'll have Don back on soon. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's what, Jill?
Quiz time.
Quiz time.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
And we're back. This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast. I'm Tom. She's Jill. And we're coming up on quiz time. Jill, how's it going?
It is going well.
I love Collectible Automobile Magazine. And not because I was sort of adjacent to it for so long.
Because you lived through it?
I did live through it. Although it started before, it existed before I got to Consumer Guide. And it exists afterwards. So there you have it.
Yes, but you've driven a lot of the cars that are in Collectible Automobile. That's kind of the point.
That's not true.
No, I enjoy going through Collectible Automobile, but obviously classic cars are not my forte. So I always end up letting you kind of take the lead on those. I feel bad I didn't chime in because there's a lot of interesting stuff. Like I really enjoyed reading the Impala SS article, and the pictures are great, and I love hearing some of the backstories. Ed Wellburn is always a fascinating individual, whatever he can get interviewed, and Gary Witzenberg is an amazing writer.
Yeah, Ed goes back. He just recently retired. So we've met Ed Wellborn, a legendary designer over at General Motors. One of my favorite features, too, we didn't get to it. They did a cheap wheels on the 1989 to 1997 Geo Tracker convertible. And there's a lot going on there. People may not remember that Geo was this weird price brand that was made up of imports, mostly Toyotas, Suzukis, and Isuzus, sold through Chevrolet dealerships. And the Tracker was really based on the Suzuki Sidekick, but it was a delightful little open-air SUV that was very much like a 3/4 scale Wrangler, and it was super popular in the day. And then there were some safety questions, and they went away. But for a while, I think every 17-year-old girl on the planet wanted one.
Probably.
Right. You're in social media.
Yes, I am on social media.
You dabble in social media.
I dabble. I know this is your favorite thing for me to talk about.
You have not 90 seconds. You have 9 seconds.
9 seconds. I like the 90 better. No, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Threads, X, Twitter, all the things. You can find me at Jill Ciminillo, and I use the hashtag Car du Jour, and I try to post a lot of stuff about the current cars that I'm driving. I love people to interact with me, ask me questions, engage, especially on TikTok. I will typically post an intro video and say, hey, this is what I'm going to be driving. What questions do you have? And then I try and capture the content. So I thrive on engagement. And in fact, when people ask me questions, that I get really good story ideas. I don't know if I mentioned it when we were talking about it in the first segment, but the story idea for the Acura ditching XM radio actually came from a reader comment. And I let the reader know, or the viewer, I guess, because it was a YouTube video, but I let the viewer know, I'm like, by the way, you inspired me to write about this. So I love interacting with people on social.
I got a Twitter question the other day that I ignored because it seemed frightening. And the question was simply, do you love trucks? I don't really know how to answer this. And it kind of felt like an 8th grader talking to another 8th grader, but...
Okay, well, that's kind of Twitter.
So I don't thrive on engagement. I just ignored this guy.
You're mean.
Did you throw out your handle?
At Jill Ciminillo, and then the hashtag is Car du Jour. I think I did that at the very beginning. You missed it.
I did. Oh, I wasn't paying attention.
Clearly.
All right, it's quiz time, Jill. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Today's topic is... Are you ready? Today's topic?
Yep. What?
Which sold better?
Okay.
We are now getting into August.
Yes.
So we need to know which sold better through the first 6 months of 2024. Are you ready?
As ready as I will ever be.
I'm just going to throw out 2 cars. You tell me which one sold better. That's it. There are 6 questions total. 5 of them are regular questions. The 6th is the bonus question, always related to the topic of the day.
Totally 100%.
All right, number 1. The Chevrolet Corvette or the Subaru WRX? Which sold better first half of this year?
Ooh.
The Corvette is the Corvette. I think people know what that is. The WRX is the very sporty sedan that Subaru crams a little turbo engine into. A lot of fun. I just drove it.
Yeah, they are both great vehicles.
That is true.
For very different reasons. I am going, and you want to know which one sold better?
Sold better.
I am going to say that the WRX sold better.
No, and not even close.
Wow.
The Corvette's moving pretty well this year. 17,914 Corvettes, just 9,200 WRXs.
Interesting, because WRX just had a bit of a refresh a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Jill, you have no points.
No points. Your favorite phrase.
Nothing for me to write down. I got my pen ready, and there's nothing to write down. You didn't do anything.
You could write a big goose egg.
All right. Number 2, the BMW X5. That's BMW's midsize crossover, or the Honda Odyssey minivan.
Now you're just messing with me.
A little bit. The parking lot of the health club I go to is like X5 City.
Yeah, I feel like X5 has to be one of the best-selling vehicles from BMW. But
it is, actually. I have the numbers here. Or no, second best. Funny thing about the X5. 2 guys that I know, they're like not really car guys, but they own an X5 at the health club. They both told me that they didn't get the base engine. They got that 6. And I think BMW has done an excellent job of convincing people that the base 6, which is fantastic, is like an upgrade engine. You know, it's the twin scroll V6.
Right.
But it's an excellent power plant. It makes that thing move very quickly. But anyway, I need
you were helping me stall. So BMW X5 or the Honda Odyssey. I think there are a lot of people who need minivans. My gut is to say Odyssey, but Odyssey is a little bit long in the tooth, so I could see sales not being so great. I'm going to say X5.
Yes, by a lot. The Odyssey was 19,500. The BMW 33,600. Interesting. The X5 is slightly outsold by the X3 compact crossover, 34,500 there. So the two of those are just a hot selling crossover machine. So you said BMW, right? So you got the point. All right, you're on the board.
Woo!
Number 3, the Honda Prologue or the Lexus RZ. We should talk about what those are. The Honda Prologue is Honda's new electric EV that was co-developed with General Motors, and the Lexus RZ is Lexus's electric crossover. It's a compact.
Yeah. So, and if anybody's familiar with the Toyota BZ4X, it's the Subaru Solterra. They're all built on the same platform and look nearly identical.
Yet the Lexus is so much better.
Yeah, you know, in the Lexus, I don't know if they actually officially came out with it, but it's supposed to have a yoke or be available with a yoke.
I have not seen that yet. They did come out with the RZ300, a less expensive two-wheel drive version of the vehicle with better range, which is probably helping sales.
Yes. Okay, so you said RZ, or what was the first one?
The Honda Prologue. Honda's first EV in the U.S.
The Prologue, I mean, is that really even rolling out in volume yet?
I can't help you with that.
Boo. Looking for clues here. The Prologue has Apple CarPlay. I would expect it to be selling better than the Blazer, but let's see.
Chevy isn't. I was going to do Blazer, but Chevy isn't breaking out Blazer and Blazer EV sales.
Yeah, GM does that weirdly. They like to lump things together.
Yeah. I'm going to need an answer at some point.
I know. I've got like 9 minutes. I could draw this out. I'm going to say RZ.
Yeah, by a lot. 5,639 versus 1,535. Our Z sales are picking up, right? It's on pace to do 11,000 this year. So you've got 2 points, Joe.
Woo!
All right. Speaking of Toyota, the Toyota Crown or the Mazda CX-90? We talked about
I want it to be the Mazda CX-90.
That's their new largish midsize crossover. It's very good. Toyota Crown we've talked about before.
Yeah. So Toyota Crown is the sedan that kind of replaces the Avalon. We had the fellow on a few weeks ago who was talking about the Crown Signia, which is the wagon.
That fellow, yes.
The fellow, very nice fellow. He's a nice chap. But it's just the Crown sedan, not all of the Crown, right?
Well, I don't think the other Crown's on the ground yet. They just report one number, so I can't even tell you.
So Crown versus CX-90. Sedan versus SUV. I'm gonna say CX-90.
Yeah, by a fair amount. 22,959 Mazdas, 14,000 Crowns. You have one. You've got three. But we still have one more question and then the bonus question. Are you ready?
All right, so I can totally throw this if I want to.
This one's probably a good question. Nissan Altima or Hyundai Kona?
Okay, so Hyundai Kona is their compact SUV, not the smallest, but it was just redesigned for this model year.
It's very good.
And it is. And the Nissan Altima is one of the sedan. Isn't that one of the ones they decided to get rid of, or is that the one they decided to keep?
No, that's going
get rid of.
The one that's Sentra is sticking around.
Okay.
The compact.
So that right there tells me probably Hyundai Kona.
No, but it's surprisingly close. The Kona is 46,539. The Altima is 59,896, but the Altima used to sell in significant volume. This is a vehicle that used to do 200,000+ units, and now it's doing about 100,000 a year, and that's why they're getting rid of it. Right? They're not going to invest anymore in this vehicle anymore. So, Kona, doing well. Going to do about 100,000 units this year. What did you say?
I said Kona.
All right, so you got 3 points. Congratulations,
Yes.
you've won. I can't give you this. I can autograph it, but I can't give it to you.
I
can autograph it, go home and scan
signature.
it. Okay, there you go. I'm showing it to you.
All right, awesome.
All right, you ready for the bonus question?
I am always ready for your very intriguing and connected bonus question.
Are you familiar with Buc-ee's?
I am familiar with Buc-ee's.
Have you been to a Buc-ee's?
I feel like I probably have. And here's the very funny thing. So whenever I drive from Chicago down to Indianapolis, there's a sign on I-65 that says, the next Buc-ee's, and it's like 354 miles away or something like that. So I've not been to that Buc-ee's.
Here's the thing about it. People will drive that far to get to Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is insane.
It is a mecca. It is a place to see.
It is a ridiculous, for people who don't know, it's basically a convenience store and gas station, and that wildly undersells the Buc-ee's experience. My wife and daughter just drove back from Colorado and stopped, and they brought me beaver nuggets, which was very nice. A Buc-ee's exclusive snack. They're like corn puffs covered with caramel. Oh my God, they're good. But Buc-ee's this is where we're going with this, Joe. Buc-ee's has a bunch of snacks that are exclusive to Buc-ee's.
Okay.
They're Buc-ee's brand snacks. I need you to tell me which of the following is not a Buc-ee's brand snack. Are you ready?
Yeah, well, hopefully you didn't put beaver nuggets on the list.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Darn.
I can make this list 5 things and add them, and then you'll know one of them.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
The Buc-ee's breakfast taco.
Okay.
Buc-o's sweet onion snack rings. Buc-ee's bohemian garlic jerky. Or Buc-ee's Oslo-style mini sardines and olive oil.
Who eats sardines?
People in Oslo.
And my dad. My dad used to like sardines.
Did he? My dad would eat sardines. Hey, Dad.
Yeah. And anchovies. My dad liked anchovies as well. Bleh.
When I was in Italy as a kid, I was in high school. Anchovies showed up everywhere all the time.
Yeah,
and I mean this.
Yeah, that could be why my dad liked them, because Italian household, and I think his mother must have cooked with them all the time. Okay, you read through those again.
Sure.
None of them sound great.
The Buc-ee's
except for the tacos. The tacos sound good.
The Buc-ee's breakfast tacos, the Buc-o's sweet onion snack rings, which I think are like Funyuns, if they're real. The Buc-ee's Bohemian garlic jerky, or the Buc-ee's Oslo style mini sardines and olive oil.
Well, it's either got to be the jerky or the sardines.
Huh.
I'm kind of leaning towards the sardines. I mean, Americans don't eat sardines.
I'm thinking about like kids in the back of a minivan passing around an oily can of sardines.
No, I'm going to say no to that. So, I mean, yeah, that's going to be it. Like that's not, it can't be. No.
You are correct. And in fact, Buc-ee's is famous for its jerky. They have like a jerky station.
Okay.
All right. There you go. You won the quiz. You got the bonus questions. So you got 4 points total. Congratulations. Do you want me to hold on to this? You want me to mail it, certified mail? What do you want me to do with the quiz?
Yeah, I think certified mail. That would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Because it's very important.
Yeah, it's a good use of money. What else do we have going? We have 2 minutes here left. You working on anything?
I did finally write that Fisker Ocean story.
Oh.
That we were talking about and how vehicles can be repaired. And so we'll include that link in the show notes because I finally got it written. And I reached out to Fisker and they actually responded. And they said that the recalls are voluntary. So not every vehicle is having the problem, but they recognize it's an issue and they're just trying to get it taken care of before it becomes a problem. And then, my concern is future vehicles. And there's a company, I wrote this I think Tuesday last week. So I think it's called American Lease. Essentially bought the remaining vehicles for Fisker. And
okay. I didn't get the name of the company. It's American Lease?
I think that's the name of it. And they have essentially decided to try and start pooling together experts who will repair vehicles in the future if they have a problem. It'll
be very interesting to see if they will assist people who are not part of the lease program, if they will provide service to them.
Could be. I don't know. But there's a Fisker Owners Association or whatever. I think it's FOA. Yeah, Fisker's Owners Association. And so, the big recommendation I've seen on Reddit is join this association and you will find more pathways for help. I think there's still some physical dealers on the ground right now, but that could change as the bankruptcy continues.
Interesting. All right. We'll share that as well. All right. Big thanks to Don Sikora of Collectible Automobile for joining us this week. Thank you, Jill. Thanks to producer Randy and the good folks here at TalkZone. That's the stuff. Let's talk more about cars again.
Next week.
Remember to check us out at consumerguide.com.
The Car Stuff Podcast is produced by J-Turn Media.
To advertise on the show, please drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.